Hello everyone and welcome back to Dragalia Foundry. Today's video is my review of the latest summon showcase, the Accursed Archives, which shares a name with the ongoing facility event. As always, with the new showcase comes a new giveaway, and the Gleam link is in the description below. Since my account is free to play, these giveaways provide a chance to, in a roundabout way, support the game. If you're new to my review videos, I go through every focus Wyrmprint, dragon, and adventurer on the banner, culminating in a verdict where I give my summoning advice. For adventurers, we take a look at build ideas as well. Sometimes I'll use shorthand like the letters UB to indicate how many unbindings something has, or we'll use a slash to separate stats and percentages at base from their upgraded levels. Otherwise, I'll try explain any details as we go. As always, the data used in this video come from the helpful folks behind the Gamepedia wiki. Thank you to them for the excellent community resource. But with all of that out of the way, let's get started. The Accursed Archives is an interesting summoning showcase. Instead of 2 featured 5-star Wyrmprints, we have 2 featured 5-star adventurers, Curran and Heinwald. There's also only a total of 9 items on focus, 4 Wyrmprints, 2 dragons, and 3 adventurers. A curiosity which doesn't affect very much. Let's begin as usual with the Wyrmprints. The first featured Wyrmprint is a new 3-star, the Heretic's Laboratory. And as with most 3-star Wyrmprints, this one is not worth pulling for and it's best sold for Eldwater, with one slight wrinkle. During the facility event, it's not bad to hang on to just to speed up your Arcane Tome intake. Even then, though, you won't need this or be at a disadvantage without it. It's very possible to fully grind out the event regardless. Outside of the grind, this print only provides its main ability to Shadow Adventurers, making it narrow. And to top things off, that ability is Skill Haste, which is already somewhat niche. Higher rarity Wyrmprints like Jewels of the Sun are certainly superior if you just want to try out Skill Haste. Even with no unbindings, that Wyrmprint has more stats than the Heretic's Laboratory, plus better overall abilities. If you just care about grinding the event, then hitting the books is another excellent substitute, especially since its skill damage ability and overall stats are among the best for any free Wyrmprint. Moving on, we come to the first featured 4-star Wyrmprint, Castaway's Journal. This is an old print which fits the theme of this event. It provides both light res and paralysis res. Castaway's Journal is definitely a more defense-oriented print, and this is reflected in its stats, which lean more toward HP than strength. As we transition into a dual Wyrmprint world, I do think any prints which grant 25% affliction resistance have a shot. If you are really committed to a natural 3-star adventurer who lacks 100% innate resistance to paralysis, like Rodrigo, Taro, Zace, Althemia, or Philia, then this print is likely to be a useful secondary choice alongside a more powerful, damage-dealing, event-grinding, or high dragon focused Wyrmprint. The only other print in the game that can grant Shadow Adventurers 25% paralysis resistance is Happy New Year, a seasonal 5-star which was exclusive to this year's New Year's showcase. That Wyrmprint is also a generally better choice for everyone I mentioned before except Philia, since she's a wind adventurer. Otherwise, your other options are Revolutionary Magic or Luck of the Draw, neither of which reaches that magic 25% number. Luck of the Draw was a freebie from the New Year's raid, so it's gone for now too. Even though these alternatives could bring a promoted 3-star up to 95% paralysis res, even that much res is insufficient to block the opening attacks of the current high dragons. So for that specific context, I could see Castaway's Journal being valuable, but only if one of those 3-star characters is your main. In general, it's not the greatest print, and it's probably not worth trying to max unbind or summon for, especially now that we can more easily do so through story events and the silver keys those provide as treasure trade rewards. I'm definitely a bigger fan of our second featured 4-star Wyrmprint, this one brand new, First Rate Hospitality. There's a lot to like about this Wyrmprint well beyond the dapper ensemble shown off in the artwork, although the art itself is amazing. I could see this being a nice secondary Wyrmprint, although as a natural 4-star, its stats will still be outclassed by most gacha and freebie 5-star prints. Besides its grinding potential for forbidden knowledge, both of the other abilities on this new Wyrmprint contribute to an adventurer's strength. The double buff ability requires you to jump through some hoops, but on an adventure with access to a consistent defense buff, this Wyrmprint seems solid. Naveed strikes me as one of the best candidates, given he's a natural attacker and his defense buff is quick to charge. charge. Karina is another great option when equipped with Aqualabris, since her kit includes healing double buff and a primary skill which becomes stronger for every visible buff she has. The HP equals 70% strength ability is much more universal, since it isn't too hard to stay above that amount in most contexts. The size of that strength increase is on the smaller side, however. I would definitely rate this Wyrmprint above the existing 4-star print with strength double buff, Sisters of the Anvil, especially since its stun res is below that 25% sweet spot. But at the same time, I feel the other strength double buff Wyrmprint, the 5-star Valiant Crown, is most certainly better, thanks to its up to 25% skill damage. Ultimately, I would assess First Rate Hospitality as being in the ballpark of Astounding Trick, which is one of the best freebie 5-star prints we've gotten from the last facility event. Astounding Trick only has one condition to meet for a 10% boost, plus slightly higher stats. But the fact that First Rate Hospitality grants a visible buff, plus its potential to reach a 13% strength boost total, or even higher if you can cycle defensive buffs very frequently, means it will sometimes be just as good or better. Alright, and that brings us to the last new Wyrmprint on this showcase, and it's unique at the very least, introducing the brand new 5-star The Fleeting Girl. This Wyrmprint is only the second in the game with last recovery, this time around with higher percentages than we've seen before. In total, it can heal up to 60% of the user's max HP once per quest, when their HP falls to 30% or below. The other ability of this Wyrmprint is Shield Prep, which grants the user a 1-use shield at the start of a quest. Being only 1 use isn't great, especially when the High Dragon opening attacks will likely be too powerful to get blocked by a shield like this, meaning it'll get cancelled out immediately. Still, I'm personally a fan of defensive Wyrmprints like this when it comes to auto-battling medium difficulty content. For quests like Imperial Onslaught and Void Battles, prints like these have a valuable role in shoring up the sometimes wacky antics of the auto-battle AI. Considering how unique the whole package of the Fleeting Girl is, I think it'll probably be better than it appears at first glance, especially once dual Wyrmprints are implemented. At a minimum, as a secondary Wyrmprint against the High Dragon, Last Recovery could kick in right away to start the fight after the dragon's opening blast drains your HP. There aren't a whole lot of notable competitors for the Fleeting Girl either. The Rose Prince also has Shield Prep, but that's probably the lesser ability on both this new print and that old seasonal one. And As the Snow Falls is the aforementioned Wyrmprint, which also has less recovery, but it has lower freebie 4-star stats, and the recovery itself is smaller too, only 50% total instead of 60%. So if you do summon the Fleeting Girl, I wouldn't sell it for Eldwater right away. As a whole, the Wyrmprints this time around are a mixed bag. I do actually like the brand new 4-star and 5-star, but I have to acknowledge their use cases are still fairly narrow. The new 3-star and old 4-star I'm less a fan of. Unless there's a character you love who needs that 25% extra paralysis res, I think you can do better. And if you're worried about grinding the event, rest assured, the free event Wyrmprint hitting the books is excellent both from a grinding and a gameplay perspective, so worry not. But now let's switch gears and talk about the dragons. Here too, this showcase is a mixed bag, but we'll get into why after we've seen them both. Let's begin with the Focus 4-star, a returnee dragon, Silk. It may not look it, but Silk is low-key one of the best 4-star dragons in my opinion. Outside of Phoenix, she probably has the best skill of any 4-star dragon in the gacha pool. It's a fairly fast attack which debuffs enemy defense, opening up your team to dealing lots of damage. Silk's basic combos are also relatively rapid. Where you may think Silk falters is that she's a mixed dragon, by which I mean she provides both HP and strength, but in smaller amounts than dragons purely focused on one stat or the other. The conventional wisdom is that pure HP dragons are best on healers, pure strength dragons are best on close range offense, and mixed dragons are best on long range offense in situations where they need the extra HP. Otherwise, a strength dragon is still a superior choice. Part of what makes Silk great then is the lack of a pure HP shadow dragon in the gacha pool, both at 5-star and at 4-star. There's no clear candidate to use for healers who instead have to rely on either Silk, Nidhogg, or the welfare dragon Meridimus to maximize their healing. We've seen this play out with another element, water, which also lacks a gacha HP dragon. In that case, this resulted in many people using Poseidon on Danielle for the Flame High Dragon trial or As a budget pick, Poliahu or Pang Lai. Silk is in a similar spot to Poliahu, but with a skill that can actually contribute significantly to team DPS, and that gives her some definite potential in the future endgame to pair with Cleo, Heinwald, or perhaps Edward. Her stats aren't near those of a maxed out Nidhogg, but they'll likely be enough to get the job done with the proper gear and facility levels. Outside of the endgame too, Silk is a nice dragon to round out your team, with her extra HP being nice for vulnerable AI, especially for hard solo content like the ongoing facility events challenge battles. All in all, it's a win-win for Silk whether early, mid, or late game in my view. After Silk, things take a turn for the incomprehensible. Yup, I'm talking about Nyarlathotep, the Crawling Chaos. This Lovecraftian behemoth certainly has a diabolical aesthetic, but that's about the best thing I can say about him. As a 5-star gacha dragon, for the time being, he's a step below the rest. He's not awful, no 5-star gacha dragons are, but just how good he is will depend a lot on future content. Nyarlathotep technically has the highest strength of any dragon in the game, at 128. When you factor in that his ability boost only hits 50% rather than the 60% seen on Marishiten, it's no contest. To make matters worse, Nyarlathotep's ability only works so long as the equipped adventurer's HP is 30% or above. It's a very generous threshold, no doubt, but in those clutch low HP moments where you want all the strength you can get, it could hurt to lose the boost and hit like a wet noodle. The trade-off is that Nyarlathotep has a second ability, Last Bulwark, which is brand new and unique. This ability grants its user a one-use shield, which blocks any incoming attack that deals less than 60% of the user's HP anytime their HP falls below 30%. And although the shield only blocks one hit each time, and shields won't stack, the ability itself can trigger multiple times if your HP rises and falls in a given quest. I do like multi-use shields, so this is certainly better than I thought in my initial preview, but I still, after much deliberation, can't come up with a great use case for this ability as of now. The best scenario for Nyarlathotep I can come up with is simply to provide a semi-reliable strength boost to round out your shadow team for easier game modes or as a filler in solo-only content like the ongoing facility event. Here's why I'm not crazy about the shield. When things are going well in medium to hard content like Imperial Onslaught and Void battles, you will seldom fall below the 30% cutoff, and therefore this shield will be irrelevant. It might come in handy in an otherwise desperate match when there's no healer left to keep you topped off, but by that point, with the healer gone, you're fighting to survive without the 50% strength boost since you're at low HP. So let's turn to even harder content, namely the endgame, High Dragons. High Jupiter is unreleased at the time I'm making this video, so it's speculative, but we'd have to envision some fairly specific mechanics to justify the use of Nyarlathotep as the preferred choice over Marishiten. Back-to-back unavoidable hits, like the red into purple circle sequences in the existing High Dragon fights, are the most likely place where the shield might come into play. We just don't know enough to judge its effectiveness yet. It might actually be great if you can immediately heal up once you get the shield to spawn, but right now its uses are narrow. Marishiten was limited to the New Year's banner, of course, so it's possible you don't have her. But even within the normal pool, a lot of people may already have the 4-star strength-focused Shadow Dragon, Juggernaut, especially since Juggernaut can provide an unconditional strength boost of 45%, and he's much easier to max unbind. I would suggest focusing on him if you're lacking a Shadow Strength Dragon, rather than pulling just for Nyarlathotep. Even the recent Welfare 5-star Dragon, Phantom, is serviceable for this facility event to round out your team, although he's definitely worse than any gacha Shadow Dragons. Ultimately, I'm much fonder of Silk than I am Nyarlathotep, and that isn't a bad thing given how much easier 4 stars are to summon for than 5 stars. I would treat Nyarlathotep as a nice bonus if you do get him, and aim for Silk if you feel your current Shadow Dragons are a bit lacking. Once again, he's not horrible. It's more that, true to his nature, he's befuddling. His second ability is a genuine mystery at the moment. Alright, and that finally brings us to the focus adventurers on this showcase. As I mentioned before, this time around, there are 2 5 stars and only 1 4 star. We'll begin with the 4 star, who's an existing unit. Of course, it's the zany Shadow Wand wielder, Kleimann. Kleimann's kit is, for lack of a better word, basic. he doesn't feel as special as a lot of the more recent 4-stars whose novel abilities and skills sometimes fundamentally transform how they play. But I hope this doesn't deter you from seeing that Kleimann's kit is also fundamentally very sound, even excellent. He has 2 attacking skills and a sizable skill damage ability once promoted to a 5-star. Plus, being a wand, he gets even more skill damage through his co-ability. This synergy alone is worthy of praise. But beyond that, Kleimann has a few more nice properties. His second skill inflicts sleep once upgraded. While this won't work on every boss, it is one of the better afflictions when it does work. Besides that, his first ability boosts his 4-strike damage. While useless on AI teammates, 4-strike damage is great under player control, since you can choose to spam 4 strikes if you wish. The wand 4-strike isn't as nuts as many close-range ones, but it's still decent when interspersed with rolls. Finally, the icing on the cake for Kleimann is his blindness res. I know this may seem like a bad thing if you're focused exclusively on the current facility event, or have your eye on the future endgame, where paralysis may be inflicted by High Jupiter, but blindness res is the rarest res of all. Only Kleimann and Berserker get it up to 100%, and if you miss the New Year's units who inflict bleeding, then blindness res is very helpful to have on an otherwise tricky map for newer players, like Imperial Onslaught. If you don't have anyone for it and struggle with that map, I think Kleimann is a fantastic pickup. I will though add that it's hard to justify promoting Kleimann since that's his main use for now, and he does okay at 4-star. When it comes to building Kleimann, I'd advise keeping it simple, true to his kit. Skill damage Wyrmprints are perfect on him. On a budget, hitting the books is spectacular. If you have it, Heralds of Hinamoto is my favorite pick, since that couples the same amount of skill damage with a small amount of skill haste. For dragons, either a pure strength or a mixed HP and strength dragon will do just fine. Once again, in the interest of budget or newer players, I'd say both Silk and Phantom are suitable. If you have access to stronger picks like Juggernaut, Nidhogg, or Nyarlathotep, those will work too, perhaps a bit better. As far as teammates go, one slight issue is that some of the best candidates have kits which also rely on 4 strikes. Szanka can also inflict sleep, and once a 5-star, she gains Sleeping Punisher. You just have to manually swap to her whenever her second skill was charged to actually use her 4 strikes. Otherwise, Vice is another fine ally. Vice can also inflict sleep, he has some blindness res, and his Broken Punisher pairs well with Kleimann's emphasis on 4 strikes, which should break bosses faster. Lastly, for weapons, I like the 4-star Shadow Wand Accursed Bear, or the 5-star generic Welkin Wand best on Kleimann. Both choices give him a 3rd attacking skill, which synergizes well with the rest of his kit. Now let's move on to our next adventurer. This one, much like Kleimann, straightforward yet powerful. Curran is the first of the 2 focus 5-stars we're looking at, and he's a Shadow Axe attacker. There is very little to say about Curran except that he's, well, strong. His strength ranks 3rd highest in the game, he has 2 attacking skills, the first of which can debuff enemy defense, and charges quickly. His 100% paralysis res makes him ideal for the ongoing event, and presumably for High Jupiter as well, where his 15% defense co-ability will be extremely appreciated. His 3rd ability of Last Offense, while just average, will also at least come into play immediately, to some effect, in a High Dragon trial. And Curran's Overdrive Punisher is superb for those trials as well, since hard bosses are in overdrive much longer than they're broken, for instance. This guy looks like an absolute beast for the endgame, and everything in between. I'm certain at a glance that he can already be used to beat High Midgard Sormer, despite the fact that he's off element. The one worthwhile comparison to be made is to Szanka, a 4-star Shadow Axe who was limited to the New Year's showcase. Sorry Eric fans, but I think Curran, while less available, is definitely better than Eric. The evaluation with Szanka is less cut and dry though. For general content where enemies can be put to sleep, I would say Szanka is just as strong as Curran when under player control, and slightly worse than him when under AI control. For the future endgame, and this is all speculative, I do think Curran will be a better choice, but part of that will come down to team composition. Szanka has nice synergy with Botan and Ieyasu, since all 3 can inflict bleed. which does more damage when multiple instances are active. I'd assume her Sleep Punisher game plan won't work against the High Dragon though, and say her Gauge Accelerator is about a wash when compared to Curran's Overdrive Punisher. For broader team comps, however, I prefer Curran. His defense debuff is no bleed, but it's not irrelevant either. And we still don't know if bleed will even work well against High Jupiter. His co-ability is the big winner for me though. With how precious 15% HP Xainfrieds are in High Brunhilde, I could very well see this co-ability giving him the slight edge. Especially since I have to assume High Jupiter will be designed around possible dual Wyrmprint survival shenanigans. Once again, this is still just speculative, but comparisons aside, there's no doubt in my mind that Curran is a terrific adventurer. Just like with Kleimann, I would build Curran with an emphasis on strength and skill damage. The same suggestions for Wyrmprints and Dragons apply, although I've opted for an act-specific Wyrmprint for Curran, which also boosts his base 4% critical rate and his skill damage to a slightly lesser degree of 15%. I've also chosen to showcase the more expensive Dragon options this time around. I suppose the last offense ability offsets the dip in strength from Nyarlathotep once per quest, which is kind of nice. For teammates, the simplest route to go for something like the event is just to use Paralysis Res Adventurers. Heinwald's strength buff would be a boon to Curran's massive strength. For a more novel choice, since Curran focuses on skill damage, a wand like Maribel could give him up to 15% more through her co-ability. Not to mention, you could stack her defense debuff skill on top of Curran's. Unfortunately, weapons are the one area where Curran suffers a bit. The 5-star Shadow Axe Primordial Titan will almost certainly be the preferred choice for the endgame due to its stats, but its skill, which buffs critical damage, isn't very good. I much prefer the 4-star Shadow Axe Trader's Despair, which has another attacking skill for most other types of content. Okay, and now we finally come to the last focus adventure on this showcase. And here we move from the very simple on these past two adventurers to the very complex. Heinwald, the 5-star Shadow Healer, is an enigma just like Nyarlathotep, once again befitting the event's theme. He's the adventurer I feel least certain about without playtesting, but in my view, all signs suggest that he's very good. I don't think he's strictly better than Cleo, but he certainly seems to provide a viable attack-oriented alternative. Cleo is a great healer in her own right, likely even for the endgame, which, since we all have her, probably means you should view Heinwald more as a luxury and not as a reason to summon. Timeouts can happen in High Brunhilde depending on the team's setup, so it stands to reason that Heinwald's extra damage could, hypothetically, make a tangible difference against High Jupiter. That's the TLDR with this adventurer. Now we get into the nitty-gritty. Heinwald's whole niche is that he's a damage-dealing healer, and his first ability reflects this. A 35% boost to skill damage is huge, and it shouldn't be hard to keep Heinwald healthy, given he himself is a healer. His second skill, Abyssal Connection, is also aggressive, and it contributes to team DPS. It ups the strength of nearby allies, it strengthens Heinwald for even more, and it powers up his damage-dealing primary skill, Call of Chaos. We'll get into that skill in a moment, since it's pretty tricky to evaluate. Otherwise, the rest of Heinwald's kit is also solid. Skill prep of 100% is useful on healers, either to have heals ready when needed for general content, or to immediately patch up the team in the endgame. Cleo only gets up to 75% skill prep, meaning she'd need to use her equipment to reach 100%. Heinwald's Paralysis Res of 100% is to be expected on a 5-star, but it's worth pointing out that Cleo gets this too. So there really are a lot of similarities between these two healers, with Heinwald's focus on damage being the big difference. So let's talk about Call of Chaos. I'm going to reference the Gamepedia description here since we need the extra detail to really understand how good this is. Prepare yourself for some arcane strategic talk. For simplicity, I'm only listing the percentages from the level 3 version of this skill. As far as damage, I'll only note that the amount dealt isn't all that far off from a wand skill like those seen on Kleimann. Of course, due to the secondary healing effect, the damage is slightly lower, but Heinwald's having a 20% strength buff from his second skill at times, plus his 35% skill damage boost, do help bridge the gap. The damage he deals isn't trivial, which can't be said of many other healers, Cleo included. Now let's look at the healing itself. That's the big question mark with Heinwald. The mystery is whether his healing will still be good enough or not. So first, 36% recovery potency. This is the same amount healed by a 4-star Verica or a 4-star Vixel before factoring in regen. With equal endgame gear, this part of Heinwald's healing only restores about 300 HP compared to 800 by Cleo. Besides the base amount though, he also drains HP based on the damage dealt. In testing, I was able to deal around 4,000 damage to Jupiter with Heinwald's first skill, using my Ieyasu with 2400 strength, transformed into a helper Heinwald with 1700 strength, and a max level hitting the books. And this is before his second skill was even used. 2050 strength is around where Heinwald will be with a max unbound Nidhogg, 5-star Shadow Staff equipped, and a 25% skill damage Wyrmprint with the usual facility levels needed for high dragons. Level 30 Shadow Altars, a level 30 library, and level 16 dojos. So if we take this 4,000 damage as average, we can expect around 4,800 damage from Heinwald when his Abyssal Connection is active. That means his Call of Chaos would heal for 120 extra HP at base and 430 extra HP under Abyssal Connection. If you can keep that second skill active, Heinwald can heal for a total of 730 HP per Call of Chaos. Otherwise, he only heals about 420 HP. That means he's only 70 HP below Cleo's healing under ideal circumstances, but with lots of extra damage to boot. Yet he's also 300 HP below her heal without his Abyssal Connection active. I will point out, however, that these are very rough calculations. What furthers my confidence in Heinwald, though, is how rapidly his skills charge. His first skill is ready within 2 full staff combos with some SP to spare, while Cleo's takes an exact 3 full combos to charge. Heinwald's second skill also charges only slightly slower than his first, meaning it will take more than 2 full staff combos, but less than 3. So he can have Abyssal Connection active most of the time. As an added bonus, with skill haste of 7% or more, he can have both skills ready within 2 full staff combos. Heralds of Hinamoto isn't quite enough, unfortunately, but it gets close with its skill haste of 4 or 5%. Even if Heinwald heals for less than Cleo, his fast charge time suggests to me that, with good uptime on Abyssal Connection, he can heal for a comparable, if not much greater amount over time. Within 6 full combos, he will get in 3 uses of his first skill, while Cleo only gets in 2 of hers. Even if Abyssal Connection isn't active for one of those, Heinwald will still have healed for more overall. Cleo still has a niche, however, in that she can cleanse paralysis, something Heinwald can't do. She can also buff team defense, which can help in unavoidable segments during high dragon trials, and even be used to potentially cheese the opening requirements of that fight. I see both as being viable for high dragons tentatively, with Heinwald probably being a superior choice for things like speedruns. But for fear of going on longer, let's wrap it up with builds for Heinwald. Being such an unconventional unit, there are a lot of directions you could go with him. For Wyrmprints, some ideas that spring to mind are Luca's Prank for general content, with extra skill damage and light res, or Give Me Your Wounded for high dragons, with extra recovery potency and full HP equals defense as a secondary print. I also like Heralds of Hinamoto on him a lot, even if the skill haste doesn't quite reach a sweet spot. For dragons, I think Nidhogg or Silk are best, to give Heinwald some extra HP. There is a possibility of him running a pure strength dragon for general content, and possibly in high dragons under the right circumstances. I'm not sure if I'd want a pure HP dragon on him at all, were one to release in the future. As far as teammates, I see some potential with Nefaria thanks to her skill haste. I also like Ieyasu due to his strength co-ability, but also since he can heal himself with his second skill. That's something which might come in handy if Heinwald heals for slightly less than I'm expecting here. Finally, when it comes to weapons, the 5-star Shadow Staff Caduceus is undoubtedly the way to go, with it granting Heinwald another attack and lots of stats. The one alternative I can see is the 3-star Megadoth Wisp, since coupled with Heinwald's 100% skill prep, that could be used to give him an immediate 25% defense buff, possibly allowing him to skirt the entry barrier of a high dragon trial. Alright, and that's everything on this showcase. So how do I think it stacks up overall? Well, a lot of it comes down to whether you are a veteran or a new player. Here's my advice. If you are playing during New Year's and already have Ieyasu, Sazanka, or Morishiten, I think you can probably skip this banner. Even Botan may be enough reason to skip since everyone already has Cleo. If you also have Silk and Kleimann, then I would definitely avoid summoning at a minimum until we get a preview of the next showcase. I think it's a pretty easy skip for players in this category like myself. Orion, Juggernaut, and Berserker are other Shadow role players you might already have within your barracks. If you are a newer player on the other hand, and if you find yourself struggling with the facility event even once your library hits level 30, then I would consider pulling here. Since there are 2 focused 5-star adventurers, there's a slightly better chance of at least getting one of them. Basically, the more things you'd be happy to summon, the better a showcase gets. So if you're new and lack Silk and Kleimann too, suddenly this showcase starts to look fairly good, especially to shore up your squad for some of the event rewards, and since Shadow Adventurers have no inherent weaknesses. The decent new 4-star and 5-star Wyrmprints are an added bonus which will help you with mid-level content like Imperial Onslaughts. They aren't amazing, but they may also have potential once dual Wyrmprints roll out. Heinwald is no Hildegard, but I wouldn't be too surprised to see him do well across a variety of maps, although the same can be said of Cleo to some extent. If you can help it though, even as a newer player, I would try Duck Out after getting 1 5-star so you can save some Wyrmite. It's likely the half anniversary on March 27th will bring some goodies, as well as some promising summon showcases in the lead up starting on March 20th. At a minimum, we're likely to get Gala this month, so if you're having no troubles with the facility event, I definitely suggest waiting until the last day of this showcase to make a decision. By then, we'll have a preview of what's next, so you can make a more informed choice. If I absolutely had to rate this showcase, I would give it a 7 out of 10. The only things I dislike are the 3-star Wyrmprint and Castaway's Journal. Everything else is okay to great. From my personal vantage point, this showcase is more like a 2 out of 10. That's because I have no need for the Wyrmprints, the Dragons, I have Kleimann, and really only the 2 new 5-star adventurers appeal to me. Hopefully you can use this video to help make your own decision. I wish you luck in any summoning you decide to do. Let me know how it goes in the comments below and what you think of the showcase overall. Thank you so much for watching. Take care everyone, and I'll see you next time.